Hi. So welcome everyone. Yes, it's really bright and not even bright here. Certainly early. Um, I am thrilled to talk with you today about the Capabilities Matrix, a project that we began actually during the pandemic, and Richard referred to that, and again talk about relevant. It's still relevant today. So let's go through and discuss what our agenda is. We're going to do some introductions. There are, in fact, a number of folks in the audience who are going to be up there on video, but we'll introduce who all contributed to this project and this effort. We're going to tell you a little bit about the backstory and the purpose. And I think the most key part of this whole session are the folks who are going to tell their stories of how they took this matrix and adapted it for some really special purposes. We're going to also share with you our updates, see if you all have any questions, and go from there. How's that? So let's move into the introductions. This project and this effort, much like everything Claire went through about the Document Excellence Group, was contributed to by a cast of dozens. Today, you are going to hear virtually from Annette in a video, although I do think she's in the room too, so tap her on the shoulder for your questions. And also Heather Morrow from Loeb and Loeb. She is based in Los Angeles. And then I'm Sherry Kappel, and based in that missing mountain hour that isn't even represented on the agenda. Claire, we need to speak about that. And then Richard, you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey there, I'm Richard MacDougall. I am the chair of the Document Excellence Group, and you had to listen to me earlier, so I don't have a lot to say. But what I do want to say is that when I was introduced to the Capabilities Matrix, I was blown away by its versatility. And as I've heard more stories about how it's been used by organizations, not just document production centers, but groups within law firms, I've been even more impressed. So I hope that you'll all take away from this some ideas about how you can apply this tool to your organization.
Thank you, Richard. I also need to, on this next slide, shout out to our larger community. In New York, there is an organization, the Professional Legal Trainers Group. You should check out their website if you haven't already. They are a venerable group. They have been around for probably almost as many years as we all have. And one of the things that they did was they reached across the community and through the LTC4 asked if Richard and I would present to them how the capabilities matrix was used, because their interest was not only in understanding it, but equally having their own intentions for adapting it. So that was very exciting. So it's a special shout out to that larger community for also taking this and running with it. So next, we're going to move into really swiftly what the actual backstory is. In fact, Tara, you can go ahead and advance one more time. We had a roundtable during the initial days of the pandemic because we were all feeling we needed each other, and we certainly did. And I am reminded of Donna Daly, who leads the Document Center, Kelly Dry and Warren in New York. And she basically said, when our discussion took us to what are the things that are keeping you up at night, she said, I am so concerned that what will happen is that my team that's been together, that there are several who could opt to retire. And that this was really worrying her because how would her actual team function? And so her concern was the attrition and the time and the skills she would lose. And then can I tell you what happened? And it still like breaks my heart. She called me like maybe 5 days later, 6 days later, and said, Sherry, guess what? It's happening. There are a few people who are going to going to retire and take this opportunity to do that. And so I said, Donna, we're gonna figure out how we can, visualize what skills you need to build back into the group and go forward and so on. So that's what we did. So we put together a little team, a little working party. And what we recognized in those early conversations, you all, is that this is absolutely about education. This is absolutely about individuals' skills. But basically, the focus and the lens on this are what are the capabilities of your entire team. And that was the key because that's what focused us on how we put this together. So much so that the initial names, those working names, always come back to haunt. But the initial name was a skills matrix, wasn't it, Richard?
Yes.
And then we realized that what it is it's the capabilities of your team.
Mm.
And that emphasis you're going to see throughout. So with that, let's advance to the next slide. So what is it? As Richard said earlier, it's a tool. It's done in Excel. I personally do not excel with my Excel skills, but Richard really complimented it. So the team had capabilities to pull this off. It lets you, fill in the elements of what capabilities the individuals on your staff have and then quantify it as well. We didn't put a legend in this, but we'll explain to you when we show you the picture of it. We'll explain what the numbers mean. It also lets you identify from that, relevancy that Claire and Jenny spoke about. What are the job requirements that we need in order for our center, our document center, to actually operate not only currently, but in the future, to see where the holes and the gaps are and to clarify what are those priorities when we recruit new folks or when we skill up others in our staff. And then one other reason that we did this is we wanted to have a way to visually articulate to leadership, this is why we're asking for the help that we're asking for, because they can see where where things as folks move in and out can see where those gaps are. And so Richard, in our next, we can advance actually to the next slide, Tara. Why don't you take folks through this and tell them a little bit about what all the colors mean?
I will. So there's two ways I think this can be approached. And one is that the leadership of a department or an organization can sit down with this spreadsheet and they can rate each staff member on these skills that are shown on the left. This is completely editable. If there is something you don't want to investigate or there is a topic that is missing, you can add anything you want to this. The other approach is to hand this spreadsheet over to the staff, each individual, and have them rate themselves. And we have ratings from 0 to 4. And although we might think that 4 means that you're an expert, the way this scale works is that 4 is actually a coach. So 0 is somebody who is untrained, 1 is a learner, 2 is a functioning operator, 3 is an expert, and 4 is a coach. Now, when we think about this, we think that ideally you want all experts. If every department in every law firm could have all experts on their entire staff, that would be fantastic. So we ran through a number of different scenarios. And in particular, in our conversations with the PLTG earlier this year, one of the concerns that was brought up, which I think is a valid concern, is that the team, the individual staff members, might see this as a weapon, where they're being judged, and that this is going to somehow be used to punish them. And I think it's really important, if we do embark on this in our group, that we point out that this is about the collective department. It's about all of us together. It's not about individuals. Yes, we'll highlight individual skills, and we may find areas that you want to improve in or that we will ask you to improve in. But in general, this is for the best of the department. It's for all of us. And the concerns that were put forward during that last meeting were that, well, what if HR wants to use it that way? And we would advise that HR has plenty of their own methodologies for judging our work, and that this isn't really the role of the capabilities matrix. So if we could have everybody be a coach, we would probably be in nirvana. That we don't think that's ever going to happen. But we have suggested that a superb staff would be ratings between 2.5 and 3. And as you see on the far right, as everybody is ranked, on the far right, you get a collective score for your team. In this particular scenario, there are a lot of 3s. There's a lot of 2.5s and above. So things are looking good for this team, but here we can see where the shortcomings are. Sherry?
Thank you, Richard. So let's go ahead and move on, Tara, because the real world applications and use of this, I want to say for all of us on the working party who were involved in this, these are what I might refer to as the proud parent moments. As the child has gone off and been applied in the real world, you all are going to really be interested in hearing from Heather and from Annette on this. So with that, we are going to go on to the next slide where we have an embedded video that the technology folks on your end are going to play. And this is Annette talking about how she adapted it for her IT team. So Tara, if you wouldn't mind going ahead and launching that. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Annette Brown and I'm the head of IT at Millbank. I've been a member of the DEG group for many years, and I'm sorry I can't join you today, but I thought I'd like to share my experience of using the capability matrix. When it was first presented to our group, obviously my first thought was how I can adapt it to get this to what I need for making it informed assessment of my team. So it wasn't an assessment from an appraisal perspective, but it was from an understanding of the skills that we had in the team and where we needed to focus our training and our re-education. What stood out for me was that this was a great tool designed as a scoring mechanism, something I'd attempted to do myself in the past, but not really had much success in achieving that. It's obviously very complicated, and Sherry and Richard have spent a lot of time working on making sure the scoring mechanism worked, and it's very easy for me to use. So each of the lines in the matrix were weighted. And so regardless of the narrative in each row, I could weight the skill depending on each team member and each of the skills that they needed for me to assess. So as a starting point, I explained to the team that this was not an appraisal. I wasn't trying to nickel and dime them on their salary, but really wanted an open and honest view of their technical and soft skills. I wanted to be able to mentor the team, find out where there was gaps in their soft skills, give them the right training for their technical skills gap. But more importantly, understand who I could send to a user when I had an issue, and be absolutely sure that that person I was sending desk side would be the right person and give the right advice to the user based on their skill sets. And that's sometimes difficult to do it in this role. So once I had all of them on side, and it didn't take that long, I began the process of looking at each of the line items and making the adjustments I needed based on what I wanted from my team. So as an example, I'm just going to share my screen so that you can see where I made the changes. Now, I didn't make many changes. As you can see, I worked in for another service industry. So for my team, it wasn't important for them to be document intensive. And also they didn't need to be conversant with document production, but they needed to be conversant with technology terms. I also added some of the applicability, so I changed some of those where from yeses to nos or nos to yeses according to what I needed. So that just gives you a brief overview, and I actually just compared it so you can see just easily where I made the few changes. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now because you don't need to see it more. So I asked them to go through the matrix themselves and score it themselves, and I asked them to be honest without fear of reprisal from me about what they were putting down in this matrix, because I wanted them to be honest so that we had a really good starting point for us to move forward. I then sat down with them individually and we discussed the score and their weighting and why they thought they'd put the correct weighting for each task. Some of them we had to change slightly because, you know, if sometimes people aren't as honest about what they can do, and sometimes they're not honest enough. And so I knew that some of them could do some of the tasks better and a lot higher weighting that they'd given themselves. So this was really a high level assessment for me, as it gave me an overview of where the strengths and weaknesses were in the team, who would be best suited to some of the ongoing projects, but more importantly, who should be assigned which tickets based on their merit. The matrix is easy to adapt, and if used with an open dialogue with the team, it can be really effective. The scoring mechanism works. It takes the hard work out of having to design something internally and can be adapted to meet specific needs. So the team were happy. They were happy with the information that came out of the capability matrix. We then did some internal training for those that needed training in areas. We shared tasks so that they could learn from each other, and that was all based on where they felt they needed it. It gave me a really good insight, and it made the team certainly more open to asking for help where they knew they needed it. So that's really it in a nutshell. I'm happy to share my experience and help anyone understand how I achieved what I did. And if you want me to help with understanding some of the strengths, more importantly, the weaknesses that needed addressing and how we went about that, I'm more than happy. Sherry has my details, and if you want to get them from Sherry, then I'm more than happy for you to do that. Hope you have a lovely evening. Sorry I can't be there, but I will be elsewhere. Thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Annette, and thanks for recording that for us for the PLTG. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move into an entirely different adaptation of this, truly inspired. I think you all should tune into this closely because not only do I think you can apply it in this manner, but there's a couple of surprises that Heather shares with Richard and I, who will be, by the way, double mint twins here, because we're going to be in the video and we're going to be broadcasting to you from above. So just to let you know that. Okay, let's go, Tara. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Heather, for joining us. What do you have to share today?
So we're talking about the capabilities matrix that the DEG organization put together. And here at Loeb, we kind of took it a different direction. So we were interested in the hard skills, not the soft skills of that matrix that was put together. And so what we did was we actually copied the skills kind of almost one for one. And we've, of course, used this for years. So we've actually modified and added our own skills in that we think are important. And then the first step we did was we added these assistant, word processor, paralegal, attorney, staff kind of columns. And then we had meetings and we just went through, okay, you know, is this skill important to this role? And then we also, if it was important, it got an X. And then if it was kind of optional, we put a little O for optional. So we kind of ranked it or rated it that way. And then we went back another time and we added this delivery method column. And we then marked whether we had a training tip on it, a video, or actual training that it's communicated in. So this really kind of gave us an opportunity to look at where we might not have materials that we needed to have in our system and available for people. You know, with the question of like, how are you using this is actually interesting, because I met with my other trainer today and we looked at it again and we're like, yeah, we really need to get back to really leveraging this. So kind of some of the things we thought about doing are, since we know what tips we have tips on, is actually sending out those tips specifically on a regular basis. So focusing kind of more the energy towards that, making sure that we're offering that training class on a regular basis if it is a skill that we want them to have. And then looking for other opportunities for communicating this information. So you can see, yeah, the ones that are yellow are the ones that I've added. I don't think they were on the original matrix. The original matrix had things like able as part of the word or understands. So that made it easier to figure out which ones I'd added over time. Ensure is another word that the matrix uses. So anyway, so that's what we did. And then we added, even at the bottom, we decided we needed some Outlook things that weren't covered. So Outlook isn't actually, or wasn't at the matrix when we copied it. It might be now. And then we also added some Windows skills, and then specific products that we want to make sure they have skills in as we're working with them. So we're not really using it for onboarding in terms of the hiring onboarding process, but we are using it in terms of maintaining the user's skill as we move forward with their career at Loeb.
And Heather, you mentioned the word career. That was one of the elements that we enriched the capabilities matrix with.
Yes, I saw that.
With career paths, they could take these skills and parlay them somewhere. And I'm just curious, did you do this in conversation with people? Did you
you know what? Yeah,
it
it's kind of an interesting thing. So in terms of us marking what skills were needed, we haven't really ever shared this beyond internally with the training group. Years ago, when I was a young one at Loeb, I used to think, okay, I could train a receptionist to be, an assistant or a word processor. And unfortunately, what I've realized is not everyone's cut out for doing a career path. There are people who just want to be a receptionist their entire life. And you have to let them accept that, right? So when we're doing training, whether it's ongoing or even the onboarding training, we're very clear that all of this training is available for anyone that wants to access it. We are here 100% for them to grow their career in any way they can. So it doesn't matter if they're a mailroom clerk or a top partner bringing in the dollars. Whatever they need, they just have to ask and we will provide it. We'll provide that skill, that education. All the classes are offered on the same level for everyone. So it doesn't matter whether you're a beginner or you've been through the styles class 5,000 times, the class is designed to be, to allow anyone that wants to learn that skill to acquire it.
That inclusivity that's awesome. That's
right.
really awesome.
Yeah, it's just hard to, it's interesting about the career path because I think there are people who come in and do have an interesting career path, and there have been several. Generally, what I find is I give them the skills and then they go find another job. Like they don't stay, right? Which is fine. We've also had it where they've hired people that fail. I mean, if we gave them the matrix, they would fail, right? They had no skills. And then, of course, it becomes like it's training's obligation to get them these skills. And so we spend months and months and months, giving them those skills. And they might get them or they fail, right? But those people tend to move on too. So if we're spending a huge amount of time with, like making sure somebody gets these skills, that's a really good indicator that they might not be the right person for that job, which is kind of another interesting element of it, especially with those soft skills that you have in the matrix, that really gives you kind of an idea. If those soft skills aren't there, you're not going to make it. It's always amusing as a trainer, and I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, as a trainer to walk in to a training classroom, right? And you just know this person gets it or they're never going to get it. And, I'll go back to HR and be like, okay, well, the question is how they do. And it's like, okay, they have the knowledge, they understand how to go and get the information. They're going to be successful. Or, you know what? It was talking to a blank wall, right? And good luck to us all, right? But I think that the skills matrix can be definitely used in a number of ways. And this is just how we've been using it at Loeb. We might go back. We have some new admin people, so I might go back and re-download the capabilities matrix and see if they want to try it out. And we'll see. The last group of admin weren't that interested in it, so we didn't ever go that direction. But that's how we're using it.
And did you use any of the, I guess I want to call it visualization? You know, that was one of the things that, Richard, you'll certainly recall when we broke out the Crayola 64 color box, you know, to visualize in color, you know, where gaps in certain areas were.
Yeah, we didn't. Yeah, I didn't
okay.
do that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yours looks like a fabulous, like the I don't want to say the gaps, that's a negative word, but what pops out to me is how each role has a different set of those capabilities.
Right. And so with doing this in Smartsheet, I could actually filter that if I wanted to train towards that. But like I said, we're very inclusive. I mean, I would, if an attorney wants to learn how to rebuild a document, I will teach them how to rebuild a document. Right?
Okay.
Because if they have that skill set, they have that capability, why not leverage it?
Right.
You know, if they understand styles or they understand numbering, it's only going to make their work product better. So that's why I'm like, give everybody everything.
Okay.
Oh.
Richard, any questions for Heather?
No, I'm really impressed about how you've sort of taken the matrix, our discussion of capabilities, and used it almost as a gap analysis.
Yeah.
You know, which is an excellent way to leverage the matrix itself.
Right. Well, it's a gap analysis on two parts, right? It's a gap analysis on our training program.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's a gap analysis on, you know, do we see that somebody does need this skill? And, you know, they don't always match up one for one. Let's see, I was trying to think of one that's able to use Format Painter. Well, I'd much rather them learn how to use styles. Right?
Right.
So do I
we
have a tip?
Format Painter in the capabilities
That's
matrix?
on one of your capabilities matrix, yes. Now, granted, it's a great skill. And it can be used, and if you understand when and where to use it, it's fabulous, right?
Right.
But in reality, I want them to learn how to apply the firm styles rather than just copy what somebody else did before. If they don't understand what they're doing, it's totally a cool tool. But yeah, there's definitely, I'm like on the list, I'm like, yeah, we don't. And when I was scrolling, if you noticed in the PowerPoint section, I was like, it's like, they just aren't, the PowerPoint's either done by marketing or word processing.
Right.
You know, we've trained it year after year after year. It's like, you know what? They're never going to get there.
Right.
So, and the people that are going to get there are going to find the resources to learn how to do it, which is great.
Well,
so making sure you have
good
those resources out there.
Good users know to reach out to the trainers.
Right.
They know to reach out for help. And that's what I think we find in every firm and in every teaching situation.
Right. Yesterday, I got a call from an attorney that needed it. It was a capability that iManage used to be able to do, and it doesn't, you know, anymore. It never happens. But you know what? He called the help desk. He got, no, it doesn't work. And he's like, you know what? That's not the answer. Right. And so he called me. I'm like, oh, I have a way to work around that. Do you want to learn how to do that? And he's like, this is a great workaround. I'm like, you know, you're right. So today I've just been showing that workaround to people all day. That's all I've done. Like, look what you can do.
You know, we need to then put together a workaround abilities matrix.
Well, as things move to the web, what we're finding is that people are desperate for workarounds in some of the most basic areas.
Yeah, I think that, and it's probably on the soft skills maybe area, is that ability to it's the analytical skill. And I know it's up there, right? it's the ability to Google, you know, the answer might be out there. And, I always say in our environment, I'm like, you can use our environment like Google. You can put in a search term up there and it's going to show you everything I've written. Trust me, every question has been asked from me after 25 years. It's hard to surprise me, right? With a question that I don't have an answer. And generally, if I answer something, so for instance, that attorney called me, I'm going to write that out. Have I written it out? No, I haven't had time. I've been in too many meetings, but I will write it. And then it's going to go on LobeLink and our intranet. And then it's available for everyone who can do a basic search, right? But when I get tickets where I'm like, I have no idea what it is, and I just Google and I'll close when I get the answer. I close the ticket with, I Googled it.
Gosh, I love it. So Heather, it is in that interpersonal skills section, analytical, curiosity, and later down in the alphabet, tenacity, because sometimes you have to be a little dogged, like your lawyer who called the help desk where they said, no, it doesn't work, and then had the tenacity to call you. Right. And it's like, it's, these are good skills.
Right. And one of the reasons I review our help desk tickets is because I know not everybody's going to get the answers they need. Right. So, I sit on that and watch, and I don't answer all of them, but if I see something being answered wrong, I'm like, whoa, wait, hold up.
And I like to look at those tickets to see what the patterns are. Right. Where are the spikes? Yes. So why are so many people asking this question all of a sudden? What have we done wrong? What have we dropped the ball on? What have we changed that we didn't realize we changed?
Right. And I use them also to create the tips. So the weekly training tips are focused on what are the recurring. So there's so much data out in our environments. It's incredible, right? We can get so much information. I'm amazed by it, but.
Well, we've been using Confluence for a few years now, and you go to this Confluence search bar and you type in a word, and it's like, look at all of these pages.
I'm not familiar with that product yet. I guess I need to Google it.
Well, this is great. I'm so happy to see another way that somebody's leveraged the capabilities matrix, because we know that people are doing it, and we know that there are it provides many solutions. So it's great to see what Lobe's doing.
Yep. Heather, thank you so much.
Sure. And have a good meeting.
Hey, yes, you'll be there. All right. Thank you.
So Richard, it's now the real me and you. We'll move Tara on to the next slide.
Okay. Thank you, Heather, for joining us.
Oops. So I wanted to give you one outtake of that video. When Richard and I spoke with Heather, it was fascinating, the connections that she revealed. So one of them was that someone within her firm had joined the Women Who Lead committee of ILTA. So here we are connecting more communities to this whole thing. And Heather showed her the matrix, showed her how they used it, what it started out looking as. And lo and behold, that individual on the Women Who Lead committee of ILTA, there's a little working group that is trying to raise awareness about women in security, legal tech security. And guess what they've done? They have taken the capabilities matrix to list the capabilities for women working in security and legal tech. And so it's been adapted even there for that context, all because Heather connected the dots. And I encourage you all to do the very same thing. If we could, Tara, move to the next slide. This is just really our progress. Again, we released it in 2020, updated it nearly every year since. And we've got the 2 use cases we shared. We shared the women who lead who used it. How is it that you all will apply the matrix? There's, it's so adaptable and there are so many good causes for it. I wanted to, in the next slide, please, I wanted to share what we did to update it in 2024. This is downloadable on the site. We added some updates for the DMS. It's only evolved every year since, goodness, Claire, the very first meeting when we talked about the document management systems. We also added the Microsoft 365 knowledge, including Teams and the Office apps and OneDrive and AI. And so I do want to make sure that you know that this thing is continuing to evolve, which means we're continuing to need your help and input and also your stories about how you've adapted it. So if you wouldn't mind, Tara, to advance to the next slide, this just really calls out some of the places where we enhanced it. Again, this is the original one that you will download. I think we also include a sample of it, maybe, filled in. So you have a blank one that you can work from, and you have one that is just a couple of examples. I encourage you, when you get the capabilities matrix, take a look at the tabs that we have in there, the worksheets we have in there for career paths, because, document processing folks can go far. I think many of you know Joy Rush from the CEO of ILTA. Guess where she started? In the Document Center. Kim Craig, who started leading the Document Center at Seyfarth, and she now owns a company, an innovation facilitation company. And so there's so many paths for us because we are in the heart of the technology. We're in the heart of absolutely everything that moves through the firm. It's just read through it. It's got a lot of good stuff in there. And if you need answers to questions, the next slide, Tara, we have our list of contacts. Annette Brown, I believe she's in the audience, so you can even tap her on the shoulder. Heather, willing to share anything that you have questions on, Richard and I. And then we encourage you to join, maybe this working party to keep this going, and or the other working parties we'll talk about a little bit later this afternoon.
Yeah, I just want to add that ideally you'll download this and you'll kick it around and you'll see how it works for you. As Annette said, and as Sherry just said, we are available to consult with you about your questions around it. We think this is a really important tool. We're thrilled at the progress people have made using the tool. And now we want to hear your questions.
I think, Richard, too, the fact that we cataloged all of this, right? I think that the whole working party who did contribute to this, cataloging all of the capabilities of a team that is the Document Center, it was illuminating. Not just for us, but for anyone in leadership who sees it.
And I want to point out, you mentioned the workbook itself has multiple tabs. One of the tabs in the workbook is a guidance tab that includes discussion about how we think you can use it. And if you have more to add to that, we want to hear from you. We have 7 more minutes.
Any questions?
Well, I'm just stepping up
Comments?
to the front so I can sort of share any questions that come from the audience. To be able to, that might work if anybody has any. Go on.
Well, if you're too shy to ask on camera, don't hesitate.
We do have a question.
Oh,
yeah.
Something's coming in.
Interesting point. I'll read the question in the chat here. I downloaded this a year or so ago, but it was felt the team would feel judged rather than see it as a useful tool. I need to find a good way around that because I really do want to put it to use.
I think, Sherry, that one of the best ways to approach that is to ask them to fill it in and let them know this is not something that's being sent to human resources. This is something we're discussing collectively as a team. And I think that might help alleviate some people's fears.
I think also if you heard us, part of what Annette said is that, she had that same response, right, from people. And sometimes you all, guess what's happened? When they fill it in, they might fill it in thinking less of their skills than they really have, right?
Yes.
And so it just is maybe you could even just use it as a conversation tool, just to kind of bring that out. Maybe you can even show the matrix filled in for the team, but without names, and
Right.
get an idea of, visualizing for everyone where they think they are. And that's another good use case for it. The visualization is very valuable.
Yeah, I want to reiterate that I think that's really an important way to approach this. Engage the staff, the team from the very beginning, and empower them to fill it in. And 2 years ago, we had the conversation about how people tend to rank themselves lower than they really are. And I think that's also a way that puts a positive spin on it without having to spin it. When somebody sees that they've judged themselves a 2 and I'm their supervisor, and it's like they're clearly an expert, and I've rated them a 3. So try that approach.
We've got we've got a question from the audience, Danielle.
Hello. My question is, even though we're advancing in the remote world, do you think being in the office less is affecting the training and the skills? Because I think that from my experience, I learned the most by being on site, by being in the office, by watching my peers. And I feel like we do that less. And I think that has a huge impact on the upskill, but I don't know what you think.
I think that that's a very valid point. I started my current position during the pandemic, after the lockdown, and I will admit that ramp up was more challenging than it had ever been in my long career. But maybe that's where this tool, excuse me, bonds the team. Maybe this tool becomes a 1-hour discussion where everybody's on Zoom and everybody talks about it. Maybe we don't use name, maybe we remove the names from it. But I think that if we visualize what our collective skills are, what our collective needs are, and give people an opportunity to speak to that, it can really enhance and sort of nurture a sense of learning.
I would like to also add, remember that one of our visualization values was that of the person who is a coach. And when you identify who the coaches are, even to themselves, if they don't realize how good they are at it, that's another way that you can, keep the team refreshed, and working together and collaborating together and learning from one another. And so again, I think that's great. And by the way, one of the other use cases, which Richard and I didn't quite hear the ultimate outcome of, but there was think of it as a like managed services sort of thing, like an overflow for the document center group. And they wished to take the capabilities matrix and showcase, their team and all the skills that they have using it. And again, it's another great way to adapt it is for any of those external resources that you might have. So it's just another way to, again, continue to build chops in the whole entire team, is just picking those people out who can amplify and educate and mentor. Some of these things are not easy to learn without that person.
All right. I think we've actually come up against our time here.
We have. And I think, well, I'm not going to steal Jenny's thunder, but I think you all get a break.